My parents invited me to a fancy family dinner, but they gave me a takeout menu and said, "We didn't think you want to participate in the real dinner." While my siblings toasted and laughed, I got up, took the reservation confirmation, and whispered to the waiter, "Charge everything to their bill." 10 minutes later, Dad yelled, $2,300? What the hell did you order? I'm Daniel, 34 years old, a real estate agent living alone in a downtown apartment. It's not luxurious, but it's mine, with a decent view and enough space for my things. For years, I've been a reliable son in my family, the one who's always there to fix problems. I pay for my sister Clara's health insurance, my younger brother Eduardo's gym memberships and tech gadgets, and a big chunk of my parents' mortgage. I never asked for a thank you. I just did it because I thought it was my duty. But one night, a dinner that seemed special opened my eyes in a snap. It was Friday afternoon, and I was reviewing a contract in my office when my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "Daniel, this Sunday we're having a family dinner at La Perla. It's something special. We expect you at 7 p.m. La Perla is one of those expensive restaurants where people go to show off, with prices that make you wonder if you're paying for food or status." I was surprised but excited. I thought maybe, after all this time, they wanted to include me in something important, perhaps to thank me for everything I've done for them. How wrong I was. On Sunday, I put on my best suit, the one I wear to close big deals with clients. I arrived at La Perla on time, and the place was as impressive as I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers sparkling, tables with pristine white tablecloths, waiters moving with almost military precision. I gave the reservation name, Torres Family, and the hostess led me to the main dining room. I saw my family at a large table in the center. My father with his patriarchal air, acting like the world owes him something. My mother with her tense smile, Clara taking photos for her social media, and Eduardo glued to his phone as usual. But the hostess didn't take me to their table. She led me to a corner of the room, to a small, pathetic table with a chair that looked like it came from a storage room. On it was a laminated takeout menu, the kind you'd see at a fast food joint with cheap burgers and salads. "This is your table, sir," she said, clearly uncomfortable. "Your parents requested you be seated in this area." I froze, holding the menu, staring at my family a few meters away. They were laughing, toasting with expensive wine, not even noticing I was there. I sat down with a knot in my stomach. It wasn't just a humiliation of being sidelined like a second-class guest. It was realizing that, to them, I wasn't part of their special dinner. I'm the one who pays the bills, who solves their problems, but not the one who deserves to sit with them. For years, I covered Claire's insurance when she was jobless, paid for Eduardo's gym memberships, his new phone, his streaming services, and my parents' mortgage, a debt they could never manage alone. Month after month, my account drained to keep them afloat, and I never asked for anything in return. But this was too much. I looked at my family from my corner. My father was telling one of his stories, gesturing like he was on a stage. Clara kept taking photos, probably captioning something about how amazing the night was. Eduardo barely looked up from his phone. My mother pretended everything was fine. As always, the anger started to build. Not sadness, but a clarity-inducing rage. For years, I convinced myself my role was to be the family's financial pillar. But now I saw the truth. To them, I was a resource, not a son. I decided I was done. I stood up, takeout menu in hand, and approached a nearby waiter, a young guy with a kind but nervous expression, like he knew something was off. "Hey," I said, quietly so my family wouldn't hear, "I want the entire bill for that table." I pointed my family. Charged to their account. Everything they order, put it on my parents' tab. The waiter blinked confused, but I nodded firmly. "Understood, sir," he said and walked away. I returned to my table and sat without ordering anything. I wasn't hungry. I didn't want to eat. I just wanted to see what would happen. I stayed there, staring at the takeout menu without touching it, watching my family from a distance. They continued their perfect night, laughing and toasting, oblivious to everything. 10 minutes later, I heard a shout that cut through the restaurant's murmur. $2, 300? What the hell is this?" My father yelled, his face red, holding the bill. Heads turned, waiters froze, and the room went silent for a moment. My mother looked confused. Clara stopped taking photos, and Eduardo finally looked up from his phone, clueless. I didn't say a word. I grabbed my jacket, stood up, and left the restaurant without looking back. As I walked down the street, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I'd done something for myself, something that said, enough. I knew this was just a beginning, that my family wouldn't stay quiet. But I didn't care. I'd crossed a line, and I had no intention of going back. That night in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with a beer, thinking about everything I'd done for my family. I remember the times I gave up my plans because my money went to their bills, the late nights working to earn enough of their expenses, the times my mother said, "You're the only one we can rely on, Daniel," while my father barely looked at me. All that, and still, they sat me at a separate table with a takeout menu. I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking. One by one, I canceled the automatic payments. Clara's health insurance, Eduardo's gym memberships and streaming services, my parents' internet and phone services. Each click felt like shedding a weight. Then I called my lawyer, a college friend who always told me I was too soft with my family. "I need my name off my parents' mortgage," I said. "Do it fast." "Daniel, this is going to be a problem," he warned. "Without your name, they won't be able to pay the mortgage. They could lose the house." He paused, waiting for me to hesitate. But I didn't. "That's not my problem," I replied. "No more. I'm done." I hung up and stared at my apartment wall. For the first time in years, I felt like I was taking control of my life. I knew the next few days would be chaos. My family would try to blame me, manipulate me, make me feel like the bad guy. But I was tired of being the invisible son, the one who only matters for paying bills. That dinner had been the last straw, and now I was finally ready to put my needs first. On Monday morning, my phone started buzzing nonstop, texts from Clara, missed calls from my mom, an email from my dad with the subject, explanation. I didn't respond to anything. I let them pile up, as if ignoring them was my way of keeping control. I knew what was coming. Yelling tears, emotional blackmail. I'd lived this script before, but this time I wasn't going to give in. I made myself a coffee and sat down to work, reviewing contracts and answering client emails. For a moment, I felt almost normal, as if last night's dinner hadn't changed everything. But the calm didn't last. At noon, Clara called for the fourth time. I finally answered to get her to stop. "Daniel, what's wrong with you?" she said without a greeting. "Dad's furious about the bill at La Perla. How could you do that? You embarrass us." Her tone was a mix of anger and superiority, like I was a child who needed scolding. "Clara," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you sat me at a separate table with a fast food menu. If anyone embarrassed anyone, it wasn't me." She went quiet for a second, but then came back at me. "You always do this, Daniel. You always play the victim. We're a family. We're supposed to support each other." That made me laugh, a bitter laugh. Support each other? "Clara, I've paid your health insurance for 2 years. I've paid for Eduardo's stuff, Mom and Dad's house, and you all treat me like I don't exist. I'm done." I hung up before she could respond. My heart was pounding, but not from anxiety. It felt like liberation. That afternoon, my mother tried another tactic. She sent a long message full of lines like, "You're our pillar, Daniel, and I don't know what we'd do without you." And a classic, "Your father is disappointed, but we know you didn't mean to cause trouble. Come home and let's talk." I didn't reply. I knew if I went, they'd pull me back into their drama and make me feel guilty until I opened my wallet again. Instead, I called my lawyer again. "How's the mortgage thing going?" I asked. "I sent the documents to the bank," he said. "In a week, your name will be off. But Daniel, your parents will get a notification soon. Brace yourself, they won't like it." I wasn't surprised. My parents have always lived beyond their means, relying on me to cover the difference. The house they live in, a big one in an expensive neighborhood, was an impulsive purchase they could never afford alone. When I signed as a co-debtor on the mortgage, I thought it was temporary just to help them get stable. But years passed and I kept paying. Now, Removing my name was like dropping a bomb on their plans. On Tuesday, my father showed up at my office unannounced. He stormed in with his usual authoritative posture, like he was about to teach me a lesson. "Daniel, this is unacceptable," he said without sitting down. "First the dinner. And now I hear you've canceled Clara's insurance payments, Eduardo stuff, and the bank called today saying you want out of the mortgage. What's wrong with you?" His voice was loud, and some of my colleagues looked up from their desks. "Sit down, Dad," I said, pointing to a chair. He didn't sit. "I'm not sitting. Explain what's going on." I sighed and leaned back in my chair. "What's going on is I'm tired of being your ATM. I've paid for everything for years, and you treat me like I don't matter. That dinner at La Perla was the last straw. You sat me at a separate table, Dad, with a takeout menu, while you all toasted with expensive wine." My father frowned, like he didn't get it. "That was a misunderstanding. We didn't think you want to join the real dinner. You're always busy, Daniel." I stared at him, incredulous. "A misunderstanding? You invited me to a family dinner and stuck me in a corner like a stranger." He shook his head, like I was exaggerating. "You're too sensitive. But this mortgage thing, that's crossing a line. If you pull out, we won't be able to pay for the house." "That's not my problem," I said, feeling every word cement my decision. "You chose to buy that house. I only helped because I thought it was the right thing, but no more." My father went silent, which was rare for him. Then his tone softened. "Daniel, we're family. You can't do this to us." But I'd heard enough. "Dad, I have work to do. We'll talk another day." He left my office without another word, but his look was a mix of anger and desperation. The next few days were chaos. Clara texted me, saying she didn't know how she'd pay for her medical appointments without insurance. Eduardo left a voicemail, complaining that he'd lost access to his gym and favorite apps. "You're selfish, Daniel," he said. "I always thought you were the good one in the family, but this is low." My mother called several times, but I didn't pick up. I knew if I talked to her, she'd try to sway me with tears and empty promises. On Friday, I got a notification from the bank. My name was off the mortgage. My parents were now solely responsible for the payments. I knew they couldn't handle it. The house had a mortgage of nearly $500,000, and without my contribution, the bank would soon start foreclosure proceedings. I felt bad for a moment, but then I remembered the small table at La Perla, the laminated menu, my family's laughter while I sat in the corner. The guilt faded fast. That weekend, I decided to disconnect. I turned off my phone and stayed in my apartment, watching movies and ordering Chinese food. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the pressure of solving someone else's problems. But on Monday, my mother showed up at my door, crying, with a bank letter in her hand, a late payment notice. "Daniel, we can't pay for the house without you," she said. "Please reconsider." I looked at her, and for a second, I felt the old urge to help. But then I remembered all the times they took me for granted. "Mom, I'm sorry," I said. "You have to figure this out yourselves." She closed her eyes, like my words were a blow. "You're our son," she whispered. "How can you do this to us?" I didn't respond. I just opened the door and waited for her to leave. After that, things got uglier. Clara started posting on social media, hinting that someone in the family had betrayed them. Eduardo sent messages calling me selfish and saying he never should have trusted me. My father stopped contacting me directly, but I heard from my mother that he was talking to a lawyer, trying to see if he could force me to keep paying the mortgage. I wasn't too worried. My lawyer friend assured me he had no case. Still, the pressure started to build. Every day brought a new message, a new complaint, a new attempt to make me feel guilty. I started feeling trapped, like my family was closing in around me. But instead of giving in, I decided to stay firm. I focused on my work, my clients, my life. I started thinking about what I wanted for myself, not for them. For the first time, I felt I could build something of my own without the weight of their expectations. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it. The next week was a constant barrage. My mother sent messages almost daily, swinging between pleas and reproaches. "Daniel, we can't lose the house," one said. "How can you do this to us?" Another read. Clara posted vague social media updates about family betrayals, clearly aimed at me. Eduardo bombarded me with texts, saying he'd had to sell his phone to pay for his things. Thanks for nothing, brother, he wrote. My father didn't contact me directly, but my mother said he was devastated and barely talking. Part of me wanted to feel pity, but the image of that small table at La Perla, with its laminated menu, kept coming back, reminding me why I'd made this choice. I threw myself into my work as a real estate agent. I'd always been good at closing deals, but now I was more focused than ever. Each sale was a small victory, proof I could build something without my family's approval. My colleagues noticed. You're different, Daniel, said Anna, a co-worker, over coffee. You seem to have more energy. I smiled and said, let's just say I'm starting to live for myself. I didn't tell the whole story, but her words gave me a boost I didn't know I needed. A week after removing my name from the mortgage, my lawyer called. The bank started the foreclosure process, he said. Your parents haven't paid anything. The house could go up for sale in a couple of months if they don't find a solution. I felt a knot in my stomach. The house where I grew up, with its Christmas and birthday memories, was at stake. But then I thought of the nights I spent working to pay their debts while they spent without thinking. It wasn't my responsibility to save them. Not this time. That night, my mother sent a message that almost made me waver. Daniel, the bank gave us 30 days. If we don't pay, we'll lose everything. Please come home. Let's talk. I pictured going, sitting with them, hearing their promises, but I knew they wouldn't change. They'd ask for money again, treat me like their automatic fix. I turned off my phone and poured myself a beer. I sat on my couch, looking out the window, and decided I needed a bigger change, not just cutting financial ties, but truly distancing myself. That weekend, I checked my bank account. Without my family's payments, I had savings I hadn't touched in years. For the first time, I could spend on myself without guilt. I'd always wanted to travel to Paris, walk its streets, sip coffee in a bistro. Every time I planned it, something came up, a bill from Clara, an emergency for Eduardo, another mortgage payment. Now, nothing was stopping me. I found an affordable flight for the next week and bought it without hesitation. I felt an excitement I hadn't felt in years, like I was reclaiming a part of my life. The days before the trip were intense. Clara called, crying, saying she'd canceled medical appointments because she had no insurance. This is your fault, Daniel, she said. I didn't respond. Eduardo texted, saying he'd gotten a part-time job but hated me for abandoning them. My father threatened to sue, though my lawyer confirmed he had no case. My mother sent photos of the house, talking about the memories we shared. Each message was an attempt to guilt me, but I stayed firm. The day before my trip, I went to the office to tie up loose ends. Anna asked where I was going. Paris, I said, and her face lit up. You deserve it, Daniel, she said. Her words meant more than I expected. That night, packing felt almost therapeutic. I folded my clothes, tucked in a book I wanted to read, and packed my passport. As I zipped up my suitcase, I felt like I was closing a chapter of my life. The flight to Paris was smooth. When I landed, the city's fresh air hit me like a wave of freedom. I settled into a small hotel near Montmartre, with a window overlooking cobblestone streets. For the first few days, I wandered aimlessly, exploring cafes and bookstores. I sat in a bistro with a coffee, watching people pass. My phone was on airplane mode, and the silence was incredible. One afternoon, while walking along the Seine, I got an email from the bank. My parents' house was up for sale. I didn't feel guilt, just peace. I knew they'd find a way to move on or not, but it was no longer my problem. I stopped on a bridge, watching the water sparkle, and thought about my future. Maybe I'd keep traveling or move somewhere new. For the first time, my life was mine. Back at the hotel, I turned on my phone. There were dozens of messages from my family, but I didn't read them. I replied to an email from Anna, who asked how I was doing. Paris is everything I imagined. I wrote, I think I'm going to be okay. And I believed it. The dinner at La Perla, the small table, the laminated menu. It was all a distant memory, a lesson that pushed me to reclaim my life.